Hello, everyone. It's Matt Schlapp with America UnCanceled, and I'm here with Andrew Langer and your great show.
Yes, Swamp Secrets, exposing regulatory dark matter.
And we've not really done this before.
No, we haven't. This is exciting.
You've been on the CPAC team for a while, and you've been doing all this great work.
Thank you.
And you've done the smart thing. You've tried to avoid me completely, so you could be more effective and more efficient.
Essentially, two ships passing in the night. But it's also because you're so busy doing the great work for the organization as a whole, and then I'm sort of buried in my cubicle doing my regulatory.
No, that's not the
work,
reason.
it's supposed to work.
If anybody knows Andrew, and I'm sure a lot of you do, he's a little bit of a legend here. As you say, you're like anti-swamp, but you're in the swamp, even though you don't live in the swamp. Yeah, but you're also not a kid. You know what you're doing, and you're about doing good things. And this whole idea that government gets things wrong a lot. That's not a controversial statement. I think the more time goes by, the more people see it. But economic and regulatory issues have kind of lost their zest in politics as politics has turned to all this silliness. I was just explaining to you about, all girls college, allowing trans men in, all this stuff about what's going on with gender, all the woke stuff. It's kind of overshadowed what a lot of us used to do in this town, which is focus on, tinkering to make sure government, we can screw up everything, doesn't screw up everything. Well, is it back in vogue?
Well, I don't know. It is certainly coming back in vogue. I mean, here's the thing: is for many, many years we spent a lot of time, and probably rightly so, focused on what was happening up on Capitol Hill. Ultra important to do that because that is the wellspring of all laws.
And it's fun, and there's always something happening that's bad.
What has happened is, as we all know, is the more attention we've paid to Capitol Hill, the more Congress critters tend to get a little scared about passing legislation that has any meaning and making meaningful changes to things. And so what happens is they pass a lot of vague laws that leave it open to the agencies to interpret. And that's where you get the massive expansion of government. On the regulatory side of things, I mean, we did some good stuff in the late 90s and into the early 2000s. And then, as you said, it languished. It was the 2016 primary where I first heard a presidential candidate utter the phrase regulatory budgeting. And that was a moment. I mean, we'd come, in 2010, I debated Jeffrey Toobin, which was a crazy situation in which Jeffrey Toobin denied that regulations were a problem, that regulatory costs were a problem. And then, 2016, we have regulatory budgeting uttered at a campaign, but nothing is really done. And that's why you have the cost of the regulatory state essentially triple in the last 15 years. Mm-hmm. It's a toxic mess.
So go back to this thing. I hadn't really thought about it that way, but that's interesting. It's always interesting to talk to you because you make me think about things. But Congress not only ceded the power of the purse by saying, earmarks are so bad that we're going to let the agency make the decision. I'm not saying earmarks are good. I'm just saying we didn't get rid of them. We just let the guys in the executive branch do them.
Exactly.
And then we've done the same thing when it comes to regulatory oversight. We've said, we want you to make sure this works well. So here, Alphabet Agency, go fill in the gaps.
It's not even a question of we want to make sure this works well. It's essentially Congress saying we want to make it look like we've done something on an issue, but we really don't want to take a stand. So we'll let the agencies.
So it's all politics.
Yes, it's all politics. We'll let the agencies. I had a conversation with a member of Congress. This is back when I was still working for the National Federation of Independent Business, still a wonderful organization. And I was testifying up on the Hill, and the congressman, maybe it was just a meeting, and the congressman said, well, whose fault is this? Expecting me to blame the EPA or the Department of the Interior, whomever. I said, well, frankly, Congressman, it's your fault. Because you guys have had ample opportunity to make changes to laws and not give the agencies this power to take it back. It's the kind of thing we all talk about, or we all see Jonathan Turley. Professor Jonathan Turley, George Washington University. We see him on TV talking about all the things that are going on, the abuses of power. Jonathan Turley, for the last 3 decades, has been talking about the problem of the expansive administrative state and how that can be weaponized and abused. The more power you give, or the more power Congress cedes to the executive branch, the more apt that power can be abused. So, we wind up in a situation, just quoted this on the radio the other day, the head of the Russian secret police, the Soviet secret police, Lavrentiy Beria, used to say, or is famous for saying, show me the man, I'll show you the crime. When you have a federal regulatory state as vast as we have it, it has an economic impact, but it also can be weaponized against your enemies.
They say that the average American citizen commits 3 or 4 felonies.
3 felonies a day. Henry Silverglade.
You don't even know.
Yes.
But so let me push you on this a little bit.
Please.
Is the reason they're not being more explicit about what the regulation is it because they're just political and they don't care? Or is it because literally, if they really did write it, nothing can get 60 votes for anything anymore.
Well, I think that may be a possibility. I think, yeah, certainly.
It's their way of bypassing this impasse that we have.
Some of it is certainly that, and some of it is they don't want to take a stand and have it be the wrong stand down the road. There are a lot of things that contribute to it. The bottom line, though, is that when Congress passes a law like the Clean Water Act back in the early 1970s, and that law says you can't pollute a navigable water of the United States. Congress didn't define what navigable water of the United States. Right.
Sounds reasonable.
Right. But the bottom line is if you don't define those terms,
it becomes a puddle.
It becomes, or a dry patch of desert sand in the high desert of Nevada, which is a true story, by the way. That really, really happened. And so that's the situation. So Congress could step in, but some of it is they can't get the votes that they need to get. Some of it is, I don't want to take a stand on this because God forbid down the road it's the wrong stand.
So did you ever work in Congress?
I never worked up on it.
Okay, so you act like you did, but I did.
No, I never did.
I did. I worked for 5 years, and the rule, just so you know, when I was a staffer, and I know I'm old now, but if you stayed longer than 5 years, you're probably going to stay forever.
Right, that's true.
If
I think
you
that's
stayed
very
less
true.
than 5 years, you'd probably move on. So anytime I've gotten a job, I've always had this 5-year thing, this like clock that goes off saying, oh my God. I could just see like being 85 years old, being chained to this desk.
Right.
Should I move on? DC, 5 years is an eternity.
It is.
Because people we call them jumpers. They just move from job to job to job. And it's not seen as you being unqualified when you do that in this town. Every other town would be like, this guy must get like drunk at lunch or something.
You know, it's funny because you and I were just talking about a mutual friend of ours that I do a lot of work with.
Trying to remember his name.
So, but the point is, you're like, well, what's he doing? I'm like, well, he's doing this job. He goes, oh, he's still doing that. You were surprised that
because no one's still doing it.
Right. Yes.
You're either amazingly talented or amazingly untalented.
That's exactly.
I'm sure our friend is talented.
Yes.
Okay, so just as Congress has ceded its authority in terms of regulatory rulemaking, at least, and certainly budgeting, right?
Sure.
At the same time that Congress has ceded that, you have the court.
Of course.
Right now, we have the court in Colorado, and we have a lot of activist courts. You know, the left says they're right wing.
Oh, yeah.
That's not true. The activism is coming from the left by and large. We want the conservative courts to get in the game. They're way too passive.
Yeah.
But this Colorado thing is just, even amongst leftists in Colorado, the entire Supreme Court in Colorado picked by very liberal, progressive Democrats, even they are about 50-50 on this idea that you should kick Trump off the ballot.
Let's be really, really clear that what it's about, because there's a lot of folks who think, and I don't know where you stand on this, Matt, but there are a lot of folks who think that they did this specifically to make sure that Donald Trump isn't on the ballot in November. I think it's just the opposite. I think this
this was about the primary, first of all.
Well, yes, of course, but the bottom line here is that this court knows full well that the Supreme Court is going to overrule them. Supreme Court case law is really, really clear on this about what these terms mean and how they're supposed to
Will it be 9-0?
No, I think it'll probably be 6-3, maybe 7-2. But it would be great if it was 9-0. But the bottom line here is that what they want are two things. Number one, they want to turn, and again, coming back to the regulatory issue, they want to make sure that the 2024 presidential election is not about Biden's record. Not the economic record, certainly not the regulatory record, which has been the biggest expansion of regulations since the Obama administration, obviously. They want it to be about Donald Trump's eligibility. And they want us to spend a lot of time arguing over whether or not Donald Trump is eligible and not arguing about these other things. While at the same time, if the Supreme Court decides this, especially if it's something like a 6-3, they can make this yet another reason why the Supreme Court is illegitimate and use this as a cudgel to drive people to the polls in November of 2024 or earlier, because we know that they're moving those things up. It's really about advancing their agenda uber.
So you can't watch TV, pick up a newspaper without people from both parties saying, you know what, this is extreme.
Right.
How do we know that? We know because it was a 4-3 decision in Colorado. So if it's not 9-0 or 7-2,
right,
you know that the Democrats on the United States Supreme Court are more extreme than these hard leftists on the Colorado Supreme Court.
Yeah.
And it gives us a real idea of where this National Democratic Party is. This is not the party that used to have, as part of its coalition, people that want a little less constitution, a little more spending.
Right.
Those people are gone.
For the most part, right. The climate, the culture has been created as such where those folks are sort of driven. We used to have a situation in America where you could, Grover Norquist, You know, love him or hate him, but Grover Norquist wrote a book called Leave Us
I
Alone.
like him.
Yeah.
He just despises me for
Okay.
some reason, but
So-
you could have him on your show and you can explain to you why.
So, but the point is, he wrote a book called, Leave Us Alone, right? Which is this idea that you can be left alone.
Very naive concept.
Yes, well, but that's the point, is that he wrote this book 10, maybe even 15 years ago. And at some point in time, sometime probably during the Obama administration, this posture changed to you will be made to care. It doesn't matter. You can no longer avoid politics because the left will keep it in your face and they will make sure. We saw this in 2020, as things were locked down and we had the riots around the country, mobs going around in big cities, surrounding people and making sure that people mouth the right incantations, as I call them. Right? You say the right things and maybe we'll let you go along your way. Vice President Pence getting lectured when he went to, poor guy goes to see Hamilton. All he wants to do is enjoy a Broadway musical, and all of a sudden the cast from the stage is lecturing him about what he ought to be doing.
Yeah, that's right.
He can't just enjoy those things. And so that's where we are. We are in a situation where it is unavoidable. And this is the problem. And then, by the way, that's part of what they're counting on, the Democrats, in terms of this. What they want to do is they want to continue to make Donald Trump as toxic as possible, so that small numbers of people.
So let me go to your thesis, because I don't think I do agree with you.
Okay.
I think I agree with you that might be their motivation.
Okay.
You might have the right analysis. My wife got a call last night from a friend of ours who's pretty left,
Okay.
but is Christian, so is pro-life, pro-family, but left on a lot of other government programs and stuff. He told her he hates Donald Trump, but he's going to vote for him.
Interesting.
Because this triggers people who are fair-minded, and they might not like Trump, and they might not like all of his tweets, and don't like all of his actions. And this person doesn't even like all of his policies. Usually that's coming from people that like his policies. But they just view this as there's some coup going on where the left is using its power corruptly, and they don't see it just as against Donald Trump. They see it against anybody who stands up for anything that used to be believed in America.
And this is the issue, right? In the end, this is going to be the craziest election cycle any of us have seen. You and I have been involved in this for a very long time.
Now, crazy, it could be scary, too.
Well, yes, of course. I mean, listen, and I think, again, Jonathan Turley said it best when he said, this is all that this country needed right at this time. At the same time, I don't know if have you seen the trailers for this movie, Civil War? It's being put out by A24.
No.
Oh, my God. When we're done with the podcast, you got to go and take a look at this because, again, the last thing that America needs is Hollywood sort of stoking the flames. It's this idea. I don't know specifically what the plot is, but it sounds like there's a conservative president, and he's a terrible person, and he drives the country apart. And so California secedes, and Texas secedes, and there's like the central part of the country. And it's very, very strange.
And then Rob Reiner brings us all together.
No, but there's a literal civil war here that's going on. It's like this is not what we need to. Yes, Rob Reiner. Listen. I always look to an atheist to lecture me as to how you be a good Christian. I mean, that is
whatever happened to Carl Reiner. He's the Reiner we all liked.
Yeah, the late great Carl Reiner. Yes, But on the other hand, not to go off on a tangent here, I started listening to his book on tape about his life.
Carl or Rob?
Carl Reiner, and it was when amazing man. But when he got on his political soapbox,
was he bad too?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Not great.
Really?
Yes. So in the end, yes, it was very, very disappointing to me. It's like, listen, it's the same reason why I'm not going to listen to Conan O'Brien's interview with Joe Biden. I just don't want to listen.
So what I find myself doing is,
Yes.
we have Comcast in our house. We can't get the Wi-Fi to work. Now the cable doesn't work. You call them, they don't care. You pay your bill, you don't pay your bill. Just what a mess. Sure. So we have, we can't turn on our TV because it doesn't work. It's amazing when you don't turn on your TV.
Yes.
And it doesn't work. You do something like crack open a book.
Sure, imagine.
I in the last year I have become addicted to the woke crossword puzzle. Even the Wall Street Journal's crossword puzzle is completely woke.
Okay.
It has to have so many references to Asia. It has to have so many references to the gay community. It has to have Their only people in the crossword puzzle are rappers. You would think Frank Sinatra never lived, or Beethoven, or somebody.
On the other side, keep in mind that because the way most rappers spell their names, it's actually a crutch for these guys who put together the crossword puzzles. Because if they need like a strange Z somewhere or a doctor or something like that, they can put it in there. So anyway,
it's true. Like there's all these doctors, and they're not doctors; they're rappers.
Yes.
So they're docs or whatever they are. They're Lil.
Yes.
Where's this Lil thing come from?
Right. See, if you need an L and an I and an L right there.
My point is saying that, which is so many of us we've kind of tuned out of the culture because it creates such rot. And my kids don't watch TV. You know, they have their, now they watch some rot, I'll tell you, like Dance Moms, some terrible stuff. But the point is that we're all kind of looking for other content, and it's amazing. There was some great content not long ago, and it's all out there, and it's amazing.
Right.
And they used to be able to produce content without politics, and that was wonderful.
Or when it was, or when it was very subtle. That's absolutely true. Though it's
a little Republican joke.
Yes. Oh, yes. Very much so. When you go down that road, it's funny. We're my girls are big into the whole true crime thing. So we've been, like for us to sort of sit down and all agree on something is really rare.
So you could watch it together?
But yeah, so we watch the true crime stuff together.
I don't know what that is.
Well, basically, it's these documentaries that have to do with some bizarre murder or circumstance. A woman disappears in a hotel.
I know what these are.
Yeah, yes.
And I always think the ones that are weird that say like sex landed me in the emergency room, and I'm always I don't think that's good for us all to watch.
Not quite like that. Well, like the latest one we're watching is about a cult called Love Has Won.
Yeah.
Where the leader went slowly crazy and was drinking colloidal silver, and she turned blue. It's a whole.
Really?
Oh yes, it's a
I've
crazy
seen the blue man. There's another man that turned blue, but
yes, no, not quite that thing. So yeah, so it's between that and then the podcast that my girls recommend, which is always a fun thing.
Okay, so it's the holidays, and we wanted to give you hope.
I appreciate.
Sit around, watch some media with your family. Just don't have it be modern.
Listen,
just watch something that's at least 25 years old.
I'm going to make a recommendation, and I know this is I'm leading with my nerd foot here, and yes, because I'm sitting on Matt's show, I'm going to do this. There is do you remember? Were you a Star Wars fan? You were not a Star Wars fan.
I was a Star Wars fan. I was not a Star Trek fan.
So do you remember?
Actually, I'm so desperate for content that I've watched a little Star Trek.
All right. Do you remember because you're a little bit older than I am, slightly. Maybe I'm a little bit
I don't really think.
Maybe we're the same age.
I think you definitely look older than me.
Well, that may be true. That's certainly true. 1978, there was a holiday special, Star Wars holiday special.
I did not see that.
Okay.
I would have been 10 years old.
Okay, so yeah, roughly the same age. So it was a nightmare. I mean, it is crazy, and I urge folks to go and watch. Look up on YouTube the Star Wars.
Was Princess Leia drunk?
Princess Leia was not drunk, but it is essentially like, remember those CBS variety shows that used to happen? It was like that, only with Star Wars. So it was B. Arthur and Art Carney on this. Imagine this. Art Carney doing his impression of Dan Aykroyd as Julia Child cooking on the TV.
Oh my God.
Anyway, there's a movie that's out now on Amazon. It's called everywhere. It's called A Disturbance in the Force. It is a documentary about this. It goes into why this thing was terrible. I urge everybody to watch that over the holidays. That's your holiday viewing.
I really respect Andrew, but I've just lost a lot.
There you go. Of course.
For giving you that piece of advice.
And at least I didn't. I could have said you go and watch the Mr. Magoo Christmas Carol, which apparently
no
makes
one even knows who Mr. Magoo is. I call Joe Biden Mr. Magoo, and people look at me like, "Who is that?"
Yes.
Anyway, the world changes. I feel like my grandfather. Andrew, thanks for being on our
Matt,
team.
thank you. Merry
and
Christmas.
The show's going well.
Yeah, the show's going great, and the work the regulatory work we're doing. Just
really
go and check it
important.
out. The Biden administration has put out their unified regulatory agenda. It's their blueprint for the next 6 months of regulations. It's horrifying. So stay tuned to it for a lot of work that the Center for Regulatory Freedom is going to be doing on that.
Keep up the great work.
Yep, thank you.
All right. And thank you all for watching America Uncanceled. I promise the next episode will be much better because Mercy will be here talking to Andrew, and it'll be much more lively. We'll talk to you all soon.